back to this Real America's Voice news break. I'm Terrence Bates. Properly taking care of your pet goes far beyond walking them and making sure they have enough water. Making sure that they have proper nutrition is key as well. Joining me today is Dr. Andrew Ciccolini. He is a medical director at the National Mill Dog Rescue. Doc, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. Glad to be here.
I'm looking forward to this conversation. Let's start here. Give me some simple nutrition habits that can really help us keep our beloved dogs healthy, comfortable, and active, particularly as they age.
Yeah, I think a couple key pieces of advice with nutrition. One, just make sure your pet is happy and fed, but also not overfed. We don't want them to be overweight. And then another key is pet food has all the nutrients that your dog needs to survive, but not necessarily what it needs to thrive. So I think there's some options with nutritional supplements out there to help for your pet.
And that's where pet-made products probably comes in. It's my understanding that there are 3 nutritional formulas that they offer that can really help our pets. What are they?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one is something called their longevity formula, which I think is comparable to like a multivitamin you would take for yourself. And so it has 4 different nutrient blends that are going to help with things like your pet's immune system, its liver function, just general health. And then a second one is its omega-3 formula. I think most of us are pretty familiar with that. Just like it's beneficial for us, it's really beneficial for our pets. It's going to help with their skin coat health, make it really shiny. And it's also going to be anti-inflammatory. And for those of us watching in Denver, it really helps with that dry skin that we all experience and our pets experience as well. And then the last one's going to be that hip and joint formula. Arthritis is the #1 thing I treat in our pets. 80% of dogs over the age of 8 have at least some version of arthritis. And so the hip and joint formula can really help maintain that mobility for your pet for longer.
It sounds like what you're describing is synonymous to supplements that humans might take.
Absolutely. And there's lots of evidence that different supplements benefit us, and then the same evidence exists for our pets. And one of the big keys for supplements with our pets is making sure that the product you're using includes the appropriate amount of those nutrients to actually be effective. And that's one of the things I like about Pet Made is they're completely transparent in terms of how much is in each product that's on the label, whereas other brands may not include that because there may not be enough in there.
Now, similar to in a human, is it advisable that someone who's considering adding these sorts of supplements to their animal's diet also can consult their pediatrician, also consult their veterinarian, before they add that?
It's actually funny you made that slip up. We consider being a veterinarian most similar to a pediatrician because a lot of times pediatricians can't talk to their patient. They have to talk to the parent, and we have the same experience. But yes, absolutely. I think anytime you're at your vet visit, just bring up your different nutrients you're using, the different supplements you're giving, what pet food you're feeding, and your vet can help you kind of come up with the best plan going forward.
And there are some deals, it's my understanding, for people who might be interested in trying some of these formulas you just mentioned. They can find some options for them, but also at a bit of a lower cost?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the next 48 hours, we're offering 35% off if you go to petmade.com and just use the code KIRK, A-I-R-K.
All right. So once again, Pet Made. How did you get involved with this company? And I think it's even more important, particularly from your professional standpoint, why you stand by this company.
Yeah, they actually reached out to me, and I get reached out to by a lot of different products. And so I take some time to research it, talk to some of my friends that are in the nutrition field before I agree to go forward with the company. But the reason I stuck with them is mainly their transparency, and they do have a full satisfaction guarantee. If you don't like a product, they'll refund it.
All right. Well, Doc, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much for sharing your expertise with us. And you do look kind of like a pediatrician as well, not just a veterinarian.
Maybe in a different life.
There you go. There you go. Always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much for being here with us today. Once again, folks, the information is there on your screen. Go to petmade.com/Kirk. That's petmade.com/Kirk. You can log on, find out more information about the different supplements that you just heard about, and more information about helping to make your pet a little bit healthier. For now, let's get you back to your regularly scheduled programming.
to it here. Another special edition of the Steve Gruber Show coming to you from Washington, D.C. It was a beautiful day yesterday. I mean, the weather has been spectacular. We had a chance to meet with a lot of great people because of an introduction from the White House and an invitation to come down. Among those folks, Callie Means. He is the senior advisor for Make America Healthy Again. Interesting conversation. Here it is.
Well, here's the bottom line. The bottom line today in America is that we're fat, we're stressed out, we've got heart disease, fatty liver, obesity, anxiety, all sorts of problems. And I bring in Callie Means. He's the White House senior advisor for MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, under the direction of course, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Bobby Kennedy. I had the good pleasure to spend a lot of time with Bobby during the elections, did a 2-hour town hall with him just before the election in Michigan. We haven't gotten any healthier since then, but at least we're finally trying, Callie. Good to be here. I'm glad you're here. The list of things I just gave you, I mean, I was just writing some things down. I mean, obesity, diabetes, ADHD, autism, depression, anxiety, high blood pressure. We're a mess.
When Bobby Kennedy was sworn in, President Trump signed an executive order. He said in 100 days, I want to report on why we're getting so sick, what the trend lines are. I'm working on that. It's going to be May 22nd. It's going to be a big day. But it's shocking. One thing that stood out to me, there's 212 countries where they have cancer rates for measurements.
Right.
We are the worst. 212. So we today in the United States have the highest rates of cancer of any society in the history of human civilization.
Here's what I do. And I've talked about this a number of times on the program. Callie, if you took a photograph of a high school graduating class 1965, 1985, 2005, 2025, we look like a different species. You look like a person did in 1965. You look of a normal size, whatever. I'm a little bit, thicker than I should be. But I go out of the street. You look at people, the obesity in this country is unbelievable. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
I'm a conservative. I'm a libertarian. And, 15 years ago, I was a lobbyist for the food industry. And it's personal choice. What is so shocking, and I think what should wake all our consciences up, is looking at a picture right now of 6-year-olds.
Oh, good Lord.
It is not the free market.
No.
That we have an epidemic of diabetes and obesity among 6-year-olds, that 38% of teens are pre-diabetic, and that almost 50% of teens are overweight or obese.
So
there's clearly something happening.
There's something happening. It's been happening since I was born. Since 1965, there's been this evolution to expansion. I tell this story. When I was in high school, the biggest kid on the football team was 205 pounds. You wouldn't even start in the line at the same high school that I went to at 205 pounds today. So I have to ask myself, I know that a lot of the food dyes have been targeted recently, but you have food and you have food-like products. If you go around the outside of a grocery store, you have food. The bakery, the butcher, the fresh fruits and vegetables, the dairy department. You go to the middle of the store, you got food-like products. They taste like food, smell like food, but they're prepackaged, highly processed, and there's got to be an affiliation here between the obesity and all this prepackaged food.
Well, I go back, the processed food industry was created by the tobacco industry. Let's just state facts, right? There's not conspiracy theories. The tobacco industry in the 1980s, as smoking rates were going down, bought, Philip Morris bought Kraft and U.S. Food, R.J. Reynolds bought Nabisco. So the cigarette industry controlled 40% of the U.S. food supply in 1990. And they lobbied for the food pyramid, recommended ultra-processed food. The USDA nutrition guidelines have been totally bought off. 19 of the 20 advisors of USDA nutrition under Biden were paid for by the food or farm industry. So we've co-opted the nutrition guidelines, which to this day recommend added sugar for 2-year-olds as part of a nutritious diet, and do not take a stand on ultra-processed food. Last year, President Biden issued a report from the USDA saying that a diet 93% in ultra-processed food could be healthy for kids. The problem with ultra-processed food is they're science experiments. You've been able to jam these dyes in, which are now banned as of yesterday from the FDA. But up until yesterday, the FDA said that petroleum-based dyes, crude oil, that's what they're derived from.
Petroleum-based.
Petroleum-based. They're crude oil. Yeah. They add one molecule to crude oil, and it's that bright neon red. Every other country, literally, in the world has phased these out of the food supply. And there is a responsibility. If you're showing, think about what a study would look like. How do you even study this? You would give a bunch of kids crude oil and see what happens. We know what happens. Any parent can tell you what happens. When kids get hopped up on these dyes, there's huge ADHD issues, there's neurological issues, So we have 10,000 chemicals in our food that actually the FDA doesn't even know about because the food industry is able to add chemicals into our food without any safety testing, which is crazy.
So they game the system.
They've absolutely gamed the system.
And you know because you worked there.
I worked there. They've gamed the system. The FDA, up until the Trump administration, has been a sock puppet of a food industry that, they're good people, but they want to make food cheap and addictive. They have scientists right now.
That's right. Sugar, salt, fat. It's a combination to make
They're
your
doing a
taste buds
science
dance,
experiment
right?
where evolutionarily you can't overeat grass-fed steak or broccoli. Food that we're not. There aren't obesity epidemics in the wild among animals.
That's right.
We've never had this problem. The
And you go
processed
to countries like Italy, you don't see problems like this either.
No. In Italy, the processed food consumption for a child is 15%.
Right.
Here
What
it's
is it?
70%.
So look, I live in a state. I live in Michigan.
Great.
We have Cereal City. There it is.
Oh, right.
We've got it all.
Kellogg's.
Absolutely. Been making Kellogg's cereal for my entire life, right? Since 1900, when cornflakes were a health food, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's what's been pushed on people. You have Fruit Loops for breakfast, which have these colorations, or you have, Captain Crunch or whatever, which is probably not the best thing you could eat.
Well, this is what Secretary Kennedy and Donald Trump, as President Trump, have been talking about, is that let's first look at the incentives. They actually had big action on SNAP food stamps, $140 billion program. Right now, that program goes mostly to ultra-processed junk food. The top item on food stamps is soda. So it's a free country. President Trump loves his Diet Coke. Nobody's trying to ban Coke.
Right.
But we should not be paying for it with a supplemental nutrition program.
Correct.
Cut that subsidy. Number two, stop recommending this stuff. So when parents are serving, and me in the 90s growing up with the food pyramid, we're being served cereal, we're being served processed food. That was following government advice. So another thing Secretary Kennedy's doing is let's at least have the USDA guidelines. That's not regulation. That's just America. It should say kids should not eat sugar. It should say kids should eat whole food. That's not what they say right now.
That's not it.
So get the science right, get the incentives right. And I do think, actually, you would never expect this. President Trump has awoken this conversation in America where people are looking at labels, people are caring about the quality of their food. That's really positive. There's going to be a lot of education.
We need a lot more label readers in this country.
100%.
Absolutely.
We're going to have great transparency
Two
on
things
labels.
about that. Number one, find out what's in your food and where it comes from. We need more food grown and produced here in America as opposed to coming from all over the world. We need American-made food, American farms, American farmers, 100%. I want to ask you about something else. Bobby said that by September, I don't know how he arrived at this, some ideas about autism. I want to ask you about something different, though, because I did some deep dives and reading and some specials about PFAS and PFOAs and the forever chemicals and those that are in, it's in this, probably in this carpet around us, it's in pizza boxes, it's in microwave popcorn bags, it's in everybody, you, me, it's in polar bears that have never seen a delivery pizza. Is there some relationship between autism? Because there are some people that say there's a relationship between these PFAS forever chemicals and this epidemic of autism we see in this country. Would you say there's a possibility of a relationship?
Absolutely. I'll talk about high level. I don't think this is even controversial. We need to look at autism through the lens of the fact that every single chronic disease is up all at once.
Yeah.
Right? We're clearly, the medical system right now is siloed. Autism is a separate diagnosis and treatment plan than obesity, than heart disease, than kidney disease, than fatty liver disease. They're all separate doctors, separate treatment plans. When people say, autism is just an overdiagnosis, are we overdiagnosing, or has there been different diagnoses for obesity? We can see that with our eyes.
Yeah,
right? Everything is going up all at once. And clearly, and this is not even controversial, no scientist would even dispute this, there's clearly some link between our gut dysfunction, our microbiome, and autism. And I think it's a very reasonable hypothesis to think that the poisoning, and I do call it poisoning, of the PFAS, of the food, of our
Back at it here in Washington, and was an interesting day to say the least. Coming up in the next hour, I want to give you a little preview of this. Had just a crazy encounter. You're going to security there at the White House, and of course you have to go through Secret Service and so forth. And in front of me is a man that's arguing robustly that he is the president of the United States, that if these people don't let him in, they're all going to be fired. And well, you know, I'm going to give the United States Secret Service tremendous credit. Their patience was remarkable, but finally, the president had to be led away in handcuffs. Well, these things happen. It's on my Twitter account. It's on Facebook. Go find it. It's fascinating. It's getting a lot of attention today. We're also very unhealthy in America. Let's just be honest about that. Kaylee Means back with me with more of the conversation about how we're going to move this country into a more healthy position than we have been, well, for many, many years. Here's more of it.
But truly, even artificial light has really messed with our hormones. If you turn a light on in a chicken coop, literally just a light, they lay 2 times more eggs.
That's right.
Like we're our circadian rhythm with the sun. I mean, again, we're not banning art, but
the chickens don't live as long, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. So we should. It's not cell phone radiation. Like these are just things that we should acknowledge and be able to make public policy for. Right now, we're spending $5 trillion on sick care. We're poisoning ourselves and then trying to drug it away. Right? We're poisoning kids, and then the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends Ozempic. We just actually need the science. This is what's so profound. We just need to know what's happening.
Let me ask you this, Kelly.
Yeah.
Shouldn't the American Academy of Pediatrics and doctors in general learn something about nutrition in medical school? They teach almost nothing about nutrition. If we put good things in, wouldn't we have good results? And I go back to Italy. It's an easy go-to. You go there, you can eat a plate full of pasta. You don't feel rotten. You don't feel bloated. And you
100%.
don't weigh 500 pounds.
I think one of the biggest trends of the past 100 days with the Trump administration is institutional change. You've seen them taking on Harvard. Why the hell is Harvard entitled to billions of dollars of government grants?
No
Without
idea.
a question. What is the ROI? The NIH, and I know Jay Bhattacharya is looking at this, they give $50 billion a year to these often woke academic institutions who I can't find a study in the last 10 years that has actually helped American health. It's all pharmaceutical R&D. Why isn't our NIH grants tied to doing foundational research? And maybe those schools actually teaching what causes a disease. My sister went to Stanford Med School. Not a single nutrition class. Not one nutrition class at that school.
Here's the difference, and you mentioned it earlier, and here's the difference that I want the people listening and watching to understand. That 6-year-old, they don't have a lobbyist.
they don't.
That farmer in Iowa probably doesn't have a lobbyist, but Coca-Cola does,
Absolutely.
and Pepsi does, and PepsiCo does, and Fritos does, and Taco Bell does, and all these. And I'm not picking on those people; those are just people that pop into mind of knowing. Look, this is not what you should be eating. Everything in moderation. The problem is we don't do anything in moderation in America anymore. Are you optimistic? Can we move the needle? We're doing it for the first time in American history that I can tell. Are we on the right path finally?
I'm very optimistic. Let's be clear. There are demonic forces against children in this country. A child that is sick and depressed
is a gold
and getting
mine.
gender transition surgery and in fear, that child is extremely profitable. A sick, addicted, depressed child is a gold mine because chronic disease.
And that is evil.
It is evil. There are demonic demonic forces that are profiting from children being in fear, being addicted, being sick. I mean, imagine just for the tech industry, for the pharmaceutical industry, for the food industry, for the technology, for like a child that is addicted to their phone, a child that is on drugs, a child that's eating ultra-processed food, a child that does not understand the interconnectivity of their body and how to thrive is a very powerful child. Yeah. Chronic disease is such a powerful invention because the child doesn't die. They just suffer. But that suffering leads to profit that's paid for by our government. So we have a very, very dark forces. I'm optimistic because Secretary Kennedy and President Trump galvanized voters for this issue.
They did.
When Secretary Kennedy is in a meeting, with various people or stakeholders, I see a light behind him of Maha moms. The legitimacy he has to pursue this issue
because moms
from
don't
the
want
voters.
Sick kids. They want their kids to be healthy and to thrive.
And when I was on this issue for the past couple of years, 3 years ago, I was talking to a bunch of senators, lawmakers. Oh, we agree with this, but it's really not a voting issue. People don't vote on this issue. It's a voting issue right now. That's what Donald Trump and President and Secretary Kennedy have done. They have made health a voting issue. So now kids have a lobbyist for them, and that's Secretary Kennedy. That's President Trump. I think one of the uniting themes of this administration is they're protecting kids. Why the hell shouldn't the Department of Education be heavily scrutinized and probably shut down? Why, are we sending kids off to all these wars? Because of the military-industrial complex. Why?
Most of the kids aren't healthy enough to go off to war.
Right, exactly. 77%.
Wouldn't qualify for the military.
77%.
That's right.
So I do think there's this actual fighting for children that's really coming through in a lot of the policies from this administration. So it is very heartening. It is, and I'm very, very optimistic.
Kaylee Means, White House Senior Advisor for Make America Healthy Again, MAHA. We could talk about this for the next several hours. There's so much to cover, and we've made so many mistakes along the way. But I appreciate you being here. Thank you for what you've done. We'll take a break, and we'll be right back.
It's truly, even artificial.
All right, there you have it. My conversation with Kaylee Means. Look, folks, we're not healthy. And that's why Bobby Kennedy, the push to have him in as the Secretary of Health and Human Services was so strong in this country. It's why Donald Trump worked with him. You look at children, and we went on that part. A sick child is a gold mine. And how twisted is that? A sick child, an obese child that has diabetes and health issues from the age of 6 or 8 or 10 or whatever it turns out to be. It's a gold mine. How twisted is that? That's the way they're looked at as a revenue source. It's a terrible thing. We need to clean up what we're doing in this country. Get out the processed food. Get out these dyes that are from petroleum, oil. I mean, I like oil. I'm an energy guy. I don't want it for dinner, all right? I think that's a fair statement. I think that's true for most of us. All right. Don't forget to check out that unusual scene that I saw outside the White House at the security gate yesterday. It's posted on Facebook and Twitter. You'll like a look at that. Make sure you follow us in those places as well. Still to come, Jenny Korn. She's the White House Faith Office Director. I've got many other people. Paula White will be with me here today. Paula White, pastor to Donald Trump for 25 years. She'll join me. A lot to go today on the Steve Gruber Show. Thank you for being here. Welcome back to it here in Washington, D.C. Beautiful weather. I mean, this is the time of year to visit Washington, apparently, when it's this nice. the headlines about those that the Democrats are supporting not getting any better. Abreu Garcia, the man deported to El Salvador that has become the champion for Democrats, this Maryland father. More evidence coming out that he is not as pure as the driven snow, to say the least. No, in fact, here's the headline. Deported Maryland man championed by Democrats pulled over for driving a car belonging to a known human smuggler. DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, confirms that Abreu Garcia was pulled over driving an SUV belonging to a confessed human smuggler and illegal alien himself, Jose Ramon Hernandez Reyes. Yeah. So this guy, this Maryland man, Kilmar Abreu Garcia, whom Democrats have been willing to die on that hill for their cause, previously pulled over by the Highway Patrol while driving a car belonging to a confessed human smuggler. The sources confirmed documents reported by Just the News and my good friend John Solomon. By the way, this is the studio of John Solomon that I'm sitting in here in Washington. Revealed Abreu Garcia was pulled over driving an SUV belonging to Reyes, another illegal alien who in 2020 confessed to human smuggling across the U.S.-Mexican border. These are not good people. Abreu Garcia, a 29-year-old illegal alien whom the Trump administration recently deported back to El Salvador, was driving the car when he was pulled over in Tennessee. You've heard that part of the story, but now we know the car he was driving belonged to a man who later confessed to being a human smuggler himself. This is who the Democrats believe are more important than you. These are the people the Democrats believe are more important than you. Let that just percolate every day. Just consider who they're going to bat for and who they're not going to bat for. Pretty remarkable. Easter returned to the White House during Holy Week this past week. It's quite a departure from where we were for the last 4 years. We're going to talk about it with Jenny Korn. She is the newly installed White House Faith Office Director. Coming up after the break on the Steve Gruber Show.
Back at the White House now, we've got a lot to talk about when it comes to faith and faith headlines this week. Of course, you had the passing of Pope Francis, 88 years old. He died early Monday, the day after Easter, of course, so Easter Monday he passed. President Donald Trump and the First Lady will be going to that celebration of life. It'll be happening Saturday in Rome. Joining me now is Jenny Korn. She's the director of the White House Faith Office. Jenny, nice to meet you.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you for having me on.
All right. Obviously, a very big headline, Donald Trump and the First Lady going to Rome. This is obviously, when you talk about faith in the world, and you have background, Roman Catholic, you just told me, it's an important changing of the guard, if you will.
It is. And, you know, the president has put out there that he commemorates the Pope's life and that he worked hard. He was a man of deep humility. He did so much work, and he was so loved by the Catholic people, and even those who weren't Catholic, just for all of his work. So I think it's really important that the president and First Lady go and pay their respects, and I think it'll be a wonderful celebration of life.
A bit of contradictions, this Pope. The first Pope from the Americas, obviously broke through in that way, but also a man that was criticized by both left and right. But in the end, staunch pro-life, never wavered on that. Right. And I think that that's one thing where at least those more conservative folks can say, well, at least we identify with that.
Right. And I would say that, yes, there was some controversy.
Sure.
I'm not going to shy away from that.
Yeah.
Contradictions. But here's the thing you could say about him. He was a man of humility. He was humble, and he truly loved the world and loved people. And so that you can, I think we can all agree about that.
Jenny, any idea? You know, obviously there's a dozen names out there. The papal conclave gets underway. A maximum of 120 people, none to be over the age of 80. I've done my homework.
Yes.
It's a historical event.
Right.
See, even people that aren't particularly interested in Catholicism,
right.
I find it interesting as far as the historical value. Because the Pope always has huge influence, right?
It's an amazing tradition that goes back centuries, and it's just we'll all be watching. We're not going to play favorites here.
No, we have no idea.
But we're just going to be watching to see. There's a few that have risen to the top, but you never know. I think it's always a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, I think it is as well. Now, here domestically, Pam Bondi came out this week, said, look, anti-Christian bias is going to end. We've seen it in schools. We've seen anti-Semitic behavior on college campuses. We've seen all these attacks on faith. But she came out specifically with these anti-Christian initiatives to stop this and eradicate anti-Christian bias in this country. What do you see? Obviously, you're a student of faith in America, of all faiths.
Right.
How does this play out for you?
Right. Well, you mentioned the title, right? So I just wanted to let your viewers know that the White House Faith Office is a newly created historic office, never been in the West Wing, as a direct report to the president. And so we have our own office led by senior advisor, Pastor Paula White, who's President Trump's pastor.
Certainly.
And so I was at the meeting yesterday with AG Bondi, with about 15 cabinet secretaries. That just shows you the importance, and sadly, that there is anti-Christian bias in the government. And so you had Secretary Rubio, Secretary Hegseth, you just had Robert Kennedy, who were all reporting on all the anti-Christian bias they have found thus far.
Already.
So Rubio went and asked for, tell us what anti-Christian bias you find. In just 7 days, they found 150 plus instances. And then we, as the White House Faith Office, brought witnesses who could tell their testimony on the bias that they've felt by the federal government, of all things.
It's clear from many of us watching that there has been a change in faith. Now, Joe Biden was a Catholic, but a lot of his ideas and comments didn't seem to line up particularly well on occasion. But we saw a return to Easter this year. We saw Franklin Graham giving a prayer. We saw Donald Trump giving testament to the risen Christ. It's a totally different attitude, it seems to me, when it comes to Easter and faith in this country.
Well, we saw what abomination it was last year when President Biden decided to put a proclamation out on Easter Sunday about the Trans Visibility Day. Such a poke in the eye to Christians all over the world.
Sure.
So this year, the White House Faith Office with President Trump said, we're going to make it big. We're going to honor Easter with the observance it deserves. So he put out a proclamation on Sunday, Palm Sunday, to say this is proclaiming it as Holy Week and what it means.
Yeah.
Then he did a video, a presidential video. Then we had an amazing, beautiful sit-down dinner with pastors, priests, and faith leaders in his residence, and we invited the country to worship and pray. Yeah. So we did it live streamed, and we did worship and prayer before he spoke, and then he spoke. And then the next day, we held a White House staff worship service that we didn't know how many people were actually going to show up.
Right.
It was standing room only and staff out the doors, worshiping and praying. And Franklin Graham, Pastor Greg Laurie, Pastor Jensen Franklin, Pastor Paula White were all part of that. So it was a beautiful week.
Jenny, let me ask you this, a little tougher question.
Okay.
I won't keep you much longer, but I do have this question, because during COVID, there was an exodus out of churches and houses of worship all across this country. And a lot of those people have not migrated back into the pews. How do we as a country return to more faith like we've seen in the White House for Easter this year? I mean, it was a celebration. It really was. How do we return more people back to these houses of worship?
Right. Well, people were leaving during COVID because the government shut down those churches. And I will tell you, President Trump was one of the first people to say, wait a second, we've got to open these churches back up. And it was the governors who tried to keep those churches shut down and even arrest people for being in their car listening to church outside of the church. I mean, insane, because we just know that there are people who, if they want to shut down the church, that they will. And so I think you set an example, and we're setting an example here with President Trump and the White House Faith Office, that it's okay to wear faith on your sleeve. It's okay to express yourself in your faith, and that people of faith have a voice in your government. There's a welcome mat for people of faith here at the White House, and I think you're going to see, we're already seeing the turnaround. We're seeing a revival everywhere. Bible sales are up. We see church attendance actually going up, especially in youth and with men. So I feel very inspired that people are going to start going back to church in bigger numbers.
You've got enthusiasm there. And men, as I've said on this program over and over again, we need more real fathers, more real men to stand up and take charge of your faith and your family. What's your prayer for America?
Oh, wow. That's a big... I pray I pray for President Trump and his safety and his family, but I also pray that America can just experience God and their faith in a way that brings them the joy that it brings me. I want people to feel the joy that I feel every day when I pray, and that there's something bigger than us. America is such an amazing country, and I want people to know and appreciate this amazing country. So I pray for love, for comfort, for peace in our country, and for us to come together.
Amen. Jenny Korn, Director of the White House Faith Office, here with us today. A brand new position, and one that I think was well overdue. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And when we come in the next hour, we'll have Paula White, who runs that office, the Faith Office. Again, it's something that wasn't there before, but it's there now, and I think it was long overdue. The celebration of Easter and Holy Week was a departure of where we were for the last 4 years, for sure. She was fascinating and an inspiration. Good way to put it. Still to come on the program this hour, we're going to have Border Patrol Chief Mike Banks. He gave me a challenge coin, by the way, yesterday. Mike Banks did. Talking about the new numbers when it comes to the number of people coming across the border, what it means when it comes to fentanyl, human trafficking, protecting your neighborhood, protecting your family, and protecting this country, frankly. Mike Banks, straight ahead, right here on the Steve Gruber Show.
Getting back to it now, Mike Banks is joining me. He is the Border Patrol Chief for the United States. And look, I don't care how you slice what your metric is, there is a lot of success, except, of course, with lawfare targeting deportation efforts by this administration. But that notwithstanding, Mike, thank you for being here, first of all. And second of all, though, the border crossings are at an all-time low. Not just all-time low for the last year or two, all-time low period for any time we've ever measured. It was less than 7,000, I believe, last month. We were having 7, 8, 10,000 a day during the previous administration.
Absolutely.
That's real success.
Real success. 97% decrease in illegal crossings on the U.S. border.
So, where do we go from here? We're jammed up in the courts. I mean, this has got to be frustrating to you guys.
It is, right? And so it's pretty typical every time we start getting some wins. They're using lawfare, like you said, in order to try to fight it. But where do we go as far as the Border Patrol? We're going to keep interdicting. We're going to keep deterring. We're going to keep building border barrier. We're going to keep building infrastructure. We're going to build back up our forces. Our forces were so greatly depleted under the previous administration, and so we're gonna get the job done. We're gonna get to zero gotaways. Right now, we're seeing a 98% decrease in gotaways, where we were seeing thousands of gotaways a day. We saw 47 yesterday across the entire United States border. 47.
That's it.
That's it.
So I mean that's a monumental difference. I mean it is. And so yes, you've got trouble in deportations. We'll get to that. But you stop the inflow, and so when you stop the inflow, you stop the human trafficking. You stop the flow of illegal drugs, right?
Absolutely. And so, a lot of times I'm asked, they're like, Chief, we're seeing a massive decrease in crossings on the border, but we're seeing a large increase in your seizures and interdiction in narcotics, specifically fentanyl, heroin, and methamphetamines. How is that? Well, because I don't have agents sitting inside of processing centers processing illegal immigrants and releasing them to the United States. My agents are actually out on the border conducting interdictions. And so I can tell you without a doubt, we are not seeing more narcotics being smuggled in. What you're seeing in our seizures going through the roof is the amount of drugs that we're getting through and getting into the interior of the United States and killing Americans by the thousands.
How many lives do you think you're saving? I mean, that's what occurs to me. I'm sitting there thinking, well, if 10,000 pills or 100,000 pills or 1 million pills of fentanyl don't go through, how many lives are saved?
So I like to put it in this context. Enough people are dying, enough people dying every day in America between the ages of 18 and 40 for fentanyl to fill a 737 aircraft per day. Every day. And so we're seeing that decrease. We're seeing the use of fentanyl decrease. Obviously, our goal is to cut off the supply. And as we start seeing the price of drugs go up, that's a win for us. It's going up because there's less supply and there's more demand. And so we are getting after it. But I think what the American people really need to understand is this is what was flowing into this country because Border Patrol agents weren't allowed to go out and do their job.
Couldn't do their job. So how do you look at it, Mike? You got to be frustrated. You've done this your whole career, I assume, right? This has been your career, law enforcement.
Law enforcement, my entire career.
And you have, pick your city, doesn't matter. They're not going to hold somebody on an ICE detainer. Here's somebody who's committed a crime. First of all, this idea that everybody needs due process, like this gentleman from El Salvador, Abrejo Garcia, right? He was tossed out. No due process. If you're in the country illegally, what more do I need to know? If you're in the country illegally, folks, what else do I need to know? Why do we have to go through these extra hoops and jumps and processes? If you're in the country illegally and it's determined by you or any other law enforcement agency to be true, isn't that due process enough? You're in the country illegally. You're not a citizen. You came in. You were not vetted. You did not come in properly. You did not show your paperwork. You did not declare what you're going to do. Why can't we just throw them out?
Absolutely. And it's exactly what you said. It's lawfare, right? It's stop this president's agenda at any cost, even if it's at the cost of Americans dying daily because of what's being smuggled into this country. And it is absurd. It is one of the most frustrating things in the world. This person had been ordered removed. Bring him back. Bring back the...
For what?
To do it. We'll deport him again. Right? You've already been ordered deported, right? You have an order.
He couldn't go to El Salvador. Why? Because you've been threatened by another gang. I mean, he's not a gang
rival
member,
gang.
But he's got emojis covering his hands whenever he's on social media with the pictures of him on his wife. They have emojis covering his hand hearts. Of course, he's a gang member.
Absolutely.
Adjudicated by not one but two courts here in America.
Absolutely.
Why do we have to know anything else? That is due process, is it not?
Correct. And so I've been asked this numerous times. If he's brought back, what will happen? He will be apprehended and deported again. again.
But this time maybe to Guatemala.
Well, we'll
or somewhere else.
To wherever we got to deport him,
if
where he's not coming back.
To El Salvador, which is just odd, but Guatemala will take him.
Right.
I mean, I know that is just something that I read. Places that are there are receiving countries.
You are, and first it's like, well, you're sending people to countries that's not theirs, and now we're sending this guy to his country of citizenship,
and that's a problem.
And that's a problem too now. So I think the problem with the lawfare is that anytime you're achieving success, we're going to do anything we can to prevent that success.
How do the people on the other side of this? I don't even know how it's an argument. Mike, how do people on the other side of this conversation look parents in the eye, look a mom in the eye, dad in the eye, who have lost a child to fentanyl, to a violent crime from an illegal alien, to a drunk driver, which, by the way, drunk drivers never got thrown out. How weird. If you get one, folks, if you didn't know this, one drunk driving in your life, and you can never go to the nation of Canada.
Right.
You probably knew that. They don't know that. But I know that. I live in Michigan. We know you can't go you get a DUI, boom, you can't go, right? Not my problem, but other people's problem. But you can drive drunk in America if you're from, 100 different countries, apparently, and everybody's cool with that. I'm not cool with that, Mike.
Right. Nor am I. And the fact is that if you come here, even if you come here illegally and you're in a temporary status, you have to abide by our laws. And if you don't abide by our laws, you're subject to deportation. You agree to it when you accept it. Immigrating to the United States is not a right; it is a benefit.
It's a privilege.
And there are rules that go with that benefit and privilege. And if you can't play by the rules, then you don't get to come. We want people that are going to come to this country and be productive and make this country a better country.
Yeah.
Listen, immigration, we built this country on immigrants. This country will only survive on immigrants. But you know what? You need to come through the front door and do it the legal way. Don't come between the port of entries, because your chances of being apprehended, prosecuted, and deported have greatly increased, because we are just getting started, and we're not going to be satisfied until we shut the border down completely.
And if you're going to come here, learn something about the place. Assimilate. Bring your culture, bring your food. I love your food. All those great things, but do it under the guise of making America a better place.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
All right. Mike Banks, greatly appreciate it. He is the United States Border Patrol Chief. Greatly appreciate you being here, sir.
Hey,
thank you so much. Nice
Thank
meeting you.
You too.
There you have it. All right, we're going to take a break here. Remember, if you come here illegally, you are going to get thrown out. And to me, my friends, that is enough due process. We'll take a break, and we'll be right back. All right, a lot of comments.
not followed too closely this case of Karen Reed, accused of killing her boyfriend, a police officer in the Boston area. But boy, a big twist in that case yesterday as the key witness, Kerry Roberts, close friend of the victim, John O'Keefe, who was with Karen Reed the morning they found him dead, has recanted her testimony in front of the grand jury, which got this case to trial in the first place. This is the second trial. She said she had heard Karen Reed, the defendant, ask how long it would take somebody to die of hypothermia. Could you Google search that? Apparently, that's a lie. It was never said. Not in front of her, anyway. She never heard it. And so the defense now is in an easy position to completely... Anything she says is of no value. You painted a very, very detailed picture in front of the grand jury, didn't you? Said defense attorney Alan Jackson. Yes, I did, except it's not true, is it? He said. I did not hear her ask that. Karen Reed is up against a whole system here because her boyfriend was in the police department. His brother was in the police department that first responded. Other members of their family are involved in politics. There's a big machine that was working against her here. I don't know what the truth of this is, but it looks very suspect now that she was, in fact, set up, as she has claimed. She said, I was framed by these people for this death. Well, when your key grand jury witness recants, means that Karen Reed's in a pretty good position. Anyhow, interesting little side note story. We'll have a verdict on that pretty quick. Coming up in the next hour, Paula White will be here. Harrison Fields will be here. Paula White, of course, pastored to Donald Trump for almost 25 years. Harrison Fields, a bright and upcoming member of the communications team from the White House. Sharp as a tack and willing to talk. We'll have him on board as we continue this special live coverage from Washington, D.C. This is the Steve Gruber Show.